Hi everybody, welcome to 9.5 Day 1, Solving by Completing the Square. Okay, so this is kind of an advanced method that you'll need in Algebra 2, so we wanted to introduce you guys to it now. It's not something that you're going to use too often, but some of you might actually like it. So it's a little strange at first though, just a warning. So first let's talk about how to do it, and then we'll actually do some. So it's called completing the square. And here's what you need to do. We want to turn a trinomial into a perfect square of something. Okay, so what that means is, go ahead and factor this. If you guys were to factor this problem, what would you get? So you would get x and x, right? And then what are two numbers that multiply to 9 but add to 6? Well, 3 and 3. Okay, so see how these are identical? So another way to write it is as x plus 3 squared. Do you guys see that, right? Because squared just means there's a second copy of it. So that's the goal today. We want to turn a trinomial into a perfect square. And here's how you do it. Okay, so to find this number, so to find this third number, you take b over 2 and you square it. That's going to give you this number. Okay, so you take b divided by 2 and square it to get this number. And then when you write it as the perfect square trinomial, this number ends up just being the b over 2 before you squared it. This is just the b over 2. Okay, so let's try an example. So first of all, no, we're not doing this one. We're going to change it. Can you guys make this a 6? No, not a 6. Make it a 4. Make this a 4, please. And let's try this one. Okay, so it says find the value of c. Okay, so find that third number. Find that third number that would make this a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we have a formula. So to find c, you do b over 2. In this problem, the b is 4. So you do b over 2, and then you have to square it. It's just a formula, b over 2 squared. So you guys, what is 4 divided by 2 squared? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So that's your answer. C would be 4. All right, let's try a couple of those. So these are very, very easy right now. It's just find C. Find that third number that would make it a perfect square binomial. All right, so for this one, find C. The formula to find C is take your b, divide it by 2, and square it. Okay, so what is that? 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So that means that C is 16. Now it says write it as the perfect square. Okay, so write it as the perfect square. So to write it as the perfect square, it's x plus b over 2, just the b over 2 part. So what was just the b over 2 part? 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so that's the perfect square. X plus 4 squared. All right, let's try a couple more. So number 2, to find C, the formula is b over 2 squared. Okay, in this case, b is negative 12. So we got to do b over 2 squared. So what's that? Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, and negative 6 squared is 36. So C is 36. But now they want you to write it as a perfect square. So the perfect square is just the x plus the b over 2. So it's x plus, okay, well, what's the b over 2? Negative 12 divided by 2, that was negative 6. And then squared. But nobody does this. Nobody writes it like that. You guys would write it as x minus 6 squared. So if it's negative, just put a subtract sign. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to do one where you actually solve the entire problem using this method. Okay, so solve by completing the square. Okay, so first step, we're going to rewrite it. X squared minus 16x plus c equals negative 15. Okay, we're going to try to find c. So look back to the first page. How do you find c? So to find c, we take b over 2 squared. Okay, so c is going to be b, which is negative 16, divided by 2 squared. All right, what's that? Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 squared is 64. Okay, so c is going to be 64. All right, so I'm going to rewrite the problem now. So now we have x squared minus 16x plus 64 equals negative 15. But here's the story. You can't just add 64 to one side and do nothing to the other. So if you're adding 64 to the left side, you're going to have to also add 64 to the right to balance it out. Equations always have to be balanced. So anything you add to one side, you have to be fair and add it to the other side. All right, now we just created a perfect square binomial. What would it be? So the formula is x plus, remember this part is just the b over 2, just this part. Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. Okay, but again, nobody writes it like that. Plus a negative, just make it a big minus. X minus 8 squared. And then on the right-hand side, we're just going to add these together. Negative 15 plus 64 is that 49? Okay, the whole point of doing this is because you guys know how to solve this. So how do you solve this now? You have something squared equals a number, so we square root both sides. Remember, this is old now. We have x minus 8 equals plus or minus. Square root of 49 is 7. And then to finish solving it, you got to add the 8 to both sides. Add the 8. All right, let's get our two answers here. So our two answers are, what is 7 plus 8? Positive 7 plus 8 is 15. And then we have to do the negative version. What's negative 7 plus 8? Negative 7 plus 8 is 1. So the answers are 15 and 1. All right, let's try one more, because I know this is really confusing. This is tough. Let's try number 3. Okay, first step, rewrite the problem and leave a blank for c. M squared plus 10m plus c equals negative 8. So first we got to find c. And remember, to find c, it's a formula. It's b divided by 2 squared. So what's that? B divided by 2 squared is 10 divided by 2 is 5, squared is 25. Okay, so that goes in for C. So let's rewrite the problem. We're going to rewrite the problem with 25 plugged in, but we got to be fair. If we randomly added 25 to the left side, we have to balance it off by adding 25 also to the right side. Okay, now the weird part. Now we just created a perfect square binomial. What is it? So it's going to be m plus, remember this part is just the b over 2. Just the b over 2 part, which was 10 divided by 2, which was 5. And then on the right side, we're just going to add it together. Negative 8 plus 25 is that 17? And now you guys know how to solve. So if you have something squared equals a number, we square root both sides. And you're left with m plus 5 equals, don't forget plus or minus. And the square root of 17 is 4.12. And then one more step. To get m, you just have to subtract 5. All right, so let's do it over here. M equals, all right, two answers. 4.12 minus 5 is negative 0.88. And then we have to do negative 4.12 minus 5. Negative 4.12 minus 5 is negative 9.12. So those are your two answers. Okay, I know it's a little weird, but that's the completing the square method. It's going to pop up a lot in Algebra 2. All right, nice job, guys. Way to hang in there. We'll review this tomorrow.